Well, the United States is apparently suffering from a new syndrome called Nothing Works Syndrome, or NWS, according to Atlantic writer Derek Thompson. In a new article, Thompson says the latest victim of NWS is air travel, as major American carriers, including JetBlue, American Airlines, and Delta, have been canceling flights left and right, as well as shedding staff, creating mayhem in airports.
Thompson says there is also a labor supply issue for the TSA. In normal times, airlines might have had a reserve crew of pilots or flight attendants to call in if needed, but now there is no reserve in place to bridge the gaps.
Yeah, I wanted to discuss this because, as viewers know, I was in Aspen last week. I did the show remotely from there, and we talked about problems with air travel. Getting out of there was a nightmare for me. I'm sure other people, I know people throughout the country have been experiencing a lot of canceled flights, really delayed flights, just the whole, nothing works syndrome. The industry is collapsing right now. That was my experience. And I thought this article, Derek Thompson, I think he's I don't agree with him on everything, but I think he's a pretty perceptive writer, even when I don't agree with him. He was pointing to a number of issues, some of it supply chain, pandemic, but also the regulatory issues. He was saying that, so because of the sort of the pandemic and the subsidy for the industry, and then the kind of forcing many pilots to retire because I guess they expected to have many fewer flights for a long time, they can't easily ramp back up because the regulatory environment, the hours the government requires you to train to become a pilot are actually far more in the U.S. than like any other developed nation. So that we can't just, and we have foreign pilots fly flights in here all the time. It's fine, even though they have less training. Nobody wants to say, because what if a plane crashes? But actually, other nations make do with this just fine. But we can't get more pilots because of those kinds of requirements. And that was an interesting thing I didn't know about.
Well, I don't want pilot regulations for pilots.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, thank you, Kim. I was like, Robby.
No.
Yes, no, but it doesn't. We can have as many regulations as a prosperous European nation that has just as many plane crashes in it as anywhere else, which is virtually zero. Planes are the safest way to travel. But you're all don't give me those eyes. There's so many more car crashes. Planes are the safest way to travel. We could have fewer hoops to jump through to get new pilots. Then you could actually get out of your airport on time.
Have you ever fell from the sky, Robby?
I ever fell from
Me neither. Me neither. I have not fallen from the sky under the current regulations. I'm not advocating for a world where we take that risk.
I'll fly the airline that has the fewest safety regulations in place, the least well-trained pilots.
You're allowed. You
risk it. If it's faster and cheaper, I will take it.
Yeah, you go ahead.
If it lets me bring alcohol onto the flight without buying it on the plane,
and take Spirit, baby. You better take Spirit Airlines and see how you make it.
Robby's over here being like, why can't the pilot drink? Why can't he have a good time? Why are there these regulations?
Robby's like, you're oppressing the pilots, and that's what the real problem is.
No way, man. I mean, look, Robby, I get it. It is way less safe to be in a car, but it is also way less frightening to die in a car accident than to die falling from the sky. Yes. I mean, what is just more terrifying of a death that I don't want to experience?
Well, this is a pretty grim subject here, but I would rather die in a plane crash than a car crash.
No.
Why?
Okay,
no. Kim, don't move on.
No
Let's let Robby expound.
It's just
why, Robby? Could you?
I think it's even too grim to get over. But it's going to be. I mean, I guess instantaneous death doesn't matter either way. But
is it instant? How high in the sky?
I don't think it's instant.
Right? I don't think it's instant
I think it's terrifying.
Well,
I don't know, Robby.
All right. I don't want to. This is going to get grisly to even argue. But additionally, go ahead, Kim.
Well, I was just going to say there is what is going on right now. I mean, back to the story at hand is that there are pilots missing. I mean, that's what's gone on here. So these airlines are the flights can't go in the air because they need 2 pilots for every single flight. And oftentimes they can only find 1 pilot. So that is due to several things. Now, a lot of people thought, well, it was people getting sick with COVID. The pilots are coming out saying that's not true. It has nothing to do with people getting sick. Sure, that is a factor. I mean, everything chips in to the lack of pilots, but being sick is one of them. It's one of the minor ones. The airlines, as you mentioned, Robby, telling these pilots, especially during the pandemic, the ones close to retirement, why don't you just retire? Because we're not going to need you. And then, of course, there were the vaccine mandates that then forced out the younger ones that didn't want to, that weren't ready to retire, and they weren't at that point in their careers, but they were ready to work. Then they got forced out, and the airline said, "Oh, don't worry, it's only 5% or 10% of it, not a big number," is what they said. Now, look, that little 5 to 10% of retirees that you forced out because you didn't want to keep them on board during the pandemic, the people you forced out for vaccine mandates, and then now just overworked pilots that quit. Yeah. Because they're like, I can't work this much anymore. I'm not seeing my families. I don't have a life. This is why we're in this situation. So now we do have a lack of pilots. That's not like a, it's one thing when it's TSA, Robby. I know because you hate the TSA. We all do. But I think
it was about time to turn to that subject of conversation. Yes.
Well, but it's one thing if it is the TSA, right? And it's like something that could be corrected with the system itself as far as how it operates. You can't correct a pilot shortage very easily.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to pump them out of a school, you can't just. There's no system you could correct.
I mean, you could cut the number of hours they need
That's
to
what
have.
I've heard about the hours.
Right.
And this, like the gas inflation, is one of those issues that are so very real that you're hearing about it before you even get to politics. You're hearing about it from other people. I'd already heard about this happening with flights getting canceled, flights getting delayed, and I went to Chicago a couple of weeks ago, and the same thing. Our flight was delayed hours indefinitely because they couldn't find a flight attendant. So this is very much so real. This is happening, and I think we gotta figure out.
Where are you on the TSA, Ole? I think the whole thing should be abolished immediately.
So,
shut down, everyone fired, all at once, done and over.
I am an immigrant, so I have an exceptional amount of hurdles when traveling. So TSA they've been on me for about 15 years. So I can't say I'm pro it. I think it's excessive. I've always thought it does. I think
safety theater.
I think
More safety
I was
theater.
going to say I think it's a lot of performativeness. I think there's a lot of statistics have shown that a lot of these like precautions we take. I got to take off my shoe. I got to do this. You all in my hand. Don't necessarily haven't really done anything to curb terrorism or the threats or these different kinds of things. I think it's a lot of just excessiveness that makes travel particularly cumbersome and isn't doing anything for our safety.
But for the sake of the argument, is that we haven't had another incident like 9/11 or any other terrorist attacks on airplanes.
Because they locked the cockpit doors. They did it. They figured it out. Lock the cockpit doors. Right. The reason they were so able to hijack the planes was that up until then, the procedure for a plane hijacking was to let the people hijack the plane. Because usually they, like all throughout the 70s and 80s, plane hijackers were never intending to crash the plane. They would take it and they would go to Cuba or something.
Right.
It was not, so you would put people more at risk if you resisted. It's kind of actually what you were talking about in your radar.
Yeah.
So it did not occur to people that the hijackers might do this kind of thing. So now we know, now no one will ever, they will never overpower the pilot. They lock the doors. You can't get in there. It's now just prohibitively difficult to do so. I'm sure terrorists will find some other thing to hit that has less security. But
I like both those arguments.
Now it's not. Yeah, the taking off the belts, the patting down the old ladies.
I like that argument, Kim, and I like Robby's counter argument too. So I don't know where I stand on this issue because
I shut it down tomorrow.
Not Robby out for the TSA, trying to put the TSA out of work.
I just want to get. to the airplane, the airport. I want to have a drink. I want to carry it onto the plane. This is America. We just celebrated our independence.
That's
you don't
all
want to
I
fall
know.
from the sky.
Just take me where I need to be safely, okay? And the older I get, the more concerned I get that I'm not immortal. So y'all just get me there safely, whatever y'all need to do.
All right, we will have more Rising right after this. We'll keep this whole thing in the air.